Well, good morning from the cottage farmstead. If we haven't met before, I'm Rebecca. And today is a very breezy and gusty sunny day outside as Tropical Storm Debbie is passing along the coast of South Carolina here. We're not expected to get a whole lot of rain out of this system, maybe a quarter of an inch on Thursday, but along the coast they are getting a ton of rain. So since it's still a hot and toasty day here in the upstate of South Carolina, and I've gotten my morning chores that I needed to outside done already, I figured it was time for me to tackle one of the chores I've been putting off during food preservation season, and that is organizing and getting another freezer inventory of our freezer down in the basement. I figured since we're going to be down in the basement anyways, that it would be fun to take a look at the canning goals that I shared earlier in the summer with you here on YouTube, to see how it actually matched up with what we produced in our garden and what we canned in the farmhouse kitchen, as well as give me updated totals for what I actually ended up putting in the freezer. So the last time I did a freezer inventory was April 29th, so back in the late spring. And as you can see, this is worse for the wear. It's been kind of beat up. I've somewhat kept track of different things that I've added to the freezer over the summer, but I know that I have probably missed different items, and especially since I've been cramming it in around a lot of the meal prep we're doing for our baby that we're expecting next month. So it's time to get this a little bit more organized so we can actually find what we want to eat this winter. I don't know if I'll get to the meat and cheese freezer inventorying today. I have not kept up with that as well as I should have. We've butchered more chicken since then, and I haven't added it to the total here. We've bought more cheese and frozen it, so definitely not as organized on the meat and cheese freezer this time around. If I'm feeling up to it, we will tackle the meat and cheese freezer, or at least update the chicken portion of it with the butcher totals that we had this year. And I wanted this video to give a little bit of encouragement that even naturally organized people also get pretty disorganized at times. Food preservation season is a time when it's all hands on deck. We are trying to get as much food into the freezer and into our canning jars as possible, and we let organization go by the wayside as we know we are going to have time as the garden dies off in the late summer, early fall to get ourselves back on track again. So if you feel like things get really chaotic during high food preservation season, know that it gets chaotic for all of us. And it's not kept track of perfectly, and the freezer becomes a jumbled mess where we are trying to find things and trying to unbury last year's frozen goods while trying to put the new frozen goods in there. That it happens to all of us, but taking an afternoon to get it all sorted will make the food preparation throughout the winter so much simpler and easier. So before we go down into the basement where the quality of light is not the best, I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the modifications that did occur on the canning and freezing and dehydrating goals that we had for this year, as the temperature and climate and drought and bugs all affect what we were actually able to harvest from the garden. This was based off of what we were planting and what we were hoping to get, but then reality does kick in at some point during the summer, and so different things get modified as we are going along. So first to talk about our canning goals here. First up, we were planning on making our fig red wine rosemary jam. It is so delicious, but with the drought and high heat that we had this year, the figs stopped producing fairly early on, and we never even got like 2 pounds worth of figs to make it even worth making jam. But we are acquainted with some of the researchers at the Clemson Peach Orchard, and they had an abundant peach crop this year. So they were selling some of the seconds off, so we bought in bulk, and I made peach jam instead of the fig rosemary red wine jam, since that's what was abundant in our area this year. Moving on down, you can see I scratched off our tomato juice Bloody Mary mix, as well as the tomato paste down here at the bottom. I made this list at the beginning of my second trimester when I had a whole lot more energy, but as summer went on, I realized that I probably wasn't going to have enough energy to tackle things like tomato juice and learning how to make tomato paste, so I focused just on the essentials with our tomato products, so things like tomato sauce, diced tomatoes, and pizza sauce, rather than experimenting with new recipes this year. You also see I crossed off salsa verde. Our tomatillo crop was a utter failure again this year due to the bugs. Every single one was bitten by bugs and is rotting on the vine. We're actually getting ready to pull those out probably later this afternoon and maybe planting a succession of green beans. But we did not have any tomatillos to speak of this year to can our salsa verde. I know that you can use green tomatoes for salsa verde, but at the moment we are letting our tomatoes continue ripening as we are giving them to family that want to preserve their own tomatoes so we're able to grow a garden this year. So we don't have excess green tomatoes at this time to make our own salsa verde. So our freezing goals are going to be updated as soon as I get the freezer inventory taken care of today. I know that I marked 15 bags of green beans going down into our freezer, but there may have been more, maybe less if I ate some of them. I don't know, so I need to check and see. Our green beans slowed down and stopped producing for a few weeks when we had the intense heat and drought. They are starting to produce again, so I will be putting a few more quart bags up as those come in, but they're coming in pretty slowly. Similar story with our bell peppers. They were pretty stunted this year. We're only getting 4 or 5 peppers a week. So I dice and freeze them as I get them coming in, but I'm not sure I'm going to hit our goal of 12. I know I've taken a few bags down there, but I'm not sure how many precisely. Our berries, we were able to get a fair amount of raspberries and blackberries and a bag of our own blueberries. But when the heat got here, the blackberry canes stopped producing, similar with the raspberries, so we're a little bit shy of our original goal of 12 to 15 bags. I think I put 10 bags down there if I remembered to mark everything. So we won't be totally out of berries, but we probably will have to buy some over the late winter, early spring before the next crop comes in. I added peaches to our freezer goals as peaches were ripe and delicious this year. So I froze a couple quart bags for us to enjoy in the winter. I got plenty of kale this year. Our okra was also a stunted crop that has not done well for us this year. I frozen, I think, maybe 2 bags of the 6 that I wanted to preserve in the freezer. But I know I have some left over from last year, so I need to update this total to make sure that we eat the bags from last year first and put the 2024 okra slices in the back of the freezer. Our carrots are still in the ground, so I do not know what we're going to have quite yet for those. We're hoping for a cool down in weather to help the carrots be a little bit sweeter, but I won't have a final total for this for a little while yet. Zucchini, all of our squash plants died, so I ended up getting a giant zucchini second from Growing Green Family Farms, which ended up being the precise amount I needed to freeze enough zucchini to make a couple batches of zucchini bread over the winter. So even though I wasn't able to grow this, I was able to get this from a local source and freeze it for us. So I don't think I had this miscellaneous goals in that original video where I talked about our preservation goals. But these are crops that we don't have a precise number. We're just hoping to see what we get to come out of the ground, especially since it's the first time we've grown some of these crops on our new property here. So we did harvest our potatoes and we had a pretty good crop and we've been eating these pretty steadily. Sweet potatoes are still in the ground. Deer did get into our garden and eat a lot of the vines last week. So we're curious to see what we actually end up at the end of the year. Winter squash was a flop as well as our summer squash was this year. I harvested a few of the Kashaw variety, hoping that they were a little bit ripe enough to use. They ended up being totally green, so I probably should just cross this out as we got no winter squash this year, even though we harvested some. Similar story with our popcorn. We had some fertility issues, and then we ended up getting bug issues. So before we could get the popcorn harvested, when it was totally dry, the cobs got full of weevils. So we have harvested all of them. We're still in the process of shucking them, but so far a lot of them have weevil damage, so we're not sure if we're going to have a whole lot from that. Minced garlic. A few videos ago, you probably saw me making some minced garlic. I still want to make some more as time allows, but we have gotten started on this one. And then with our herbs, I like to dehydrate enough herbs for the winter and time me over until the next round of fresh herbs comes in. So I have taken care of the basil, oregano, rosemary, thyme, and celery needs, and I started dehydrating parsley, but I need to get a little bit more. I only ended up with 2 plants this year, so I need to see if Growing Green Family Farms has some of the flat leaf parsley that we prefer, to see if I can dehydrate a little bit more parsley for our winter soups and stews. So let's head down into our basement and get this sorted out. So I am back upstairs with my very messy notes that I need to input into my spreadsheet real quick here before I forget what all my notations mean. I did decide not to go through all of the beef products in our chest freezer and to just add in the chicken that I know that we butchered, because I did keep track of that when we butchered our chickens. On another day, I'll see if Farmer Nathan is able to bring some of the larger coolers home and enable me to get a lot of the beef that's in the bottom of the freezer out, so I can get an idea of how much ground beef I have and some of the other cuts of meat from the beef that we harvested last year, as we are expecting to have another quarter cow coming up in December. So I want to make sure I have a good idea of what cuts I want to request this year, rather than just getting a whole bunch of ground beef and not actually needing it. Well, thank you for joining me for this freezer inventory and preservation update video. I hope you found it encouraging to see that everybody's freezer does get out of control at some point during food preservation season. And I also lose things in the back of my freezer. I was finding things from 2021 and 2022 that were way in the back of our freezer because I hadn't done a thorough clean out, checking dates on anything in a while. So I have some of those things thawing in my sink right now. I'll be feeding what I can to our chickens, as they will enjoy some 3-year-old okra, I'm sure, that would be a bit frostbitten for us humans to consume. Well, I hope your gardens have been just as bountiful this past year and that your freezers are filling up as well. And with that, I'll catch you next time.